It's something we kind of take for granted today, isn't it? The idea that we, the people, actually get a say in how things are run. But this was not always the plan. In fact, for most of human history, it was a totally radical, even dangerous idea. So, how on earth did we go from there to here? Let's dig in. Think about it. For thousands and thousands of years, power was a one-way street. It flowed from the top, from pharaohs, emperors, and kings, straight down to everybody else. So the big question is, how did we flip that script? How did we go from being subjects to being citizens? That's the journey we're going to take. Okay, so first things first. We have to understand what the default setting was for, well, pretty much all of human civilization. For millennia, the world was ruled by one simple and very powerful idea. The person at the top has all the power. Just try to imagine a world where your opinion means nothing. Seriously. In ancient civilizations like Egypt, Mesopotamia, or Persia, that was just the reality. Power was held by a tiny group of elites. Decisions came from the top, and if you were an ordinary person, you had zero say in the matter. It wasn't about what was fair, it was just the way the world worked. But then, in one little corner of the world, something completely different started to happen. A totally wild idea began to grow, and it would, no exaggeration, change the course of history. We're talking, of course, about ancient Athens. And the word they came up with for this idea is just perfect: demokratia. It comes from two Greek words, demos, which means the people, and kratos, which means power. So literally, power of the people. I mean, how cool is that? It sounds simple to us, but back then, that phrase was absolutely explosive.
Okay, so how did this power to the people thing actually work in practice? Well, in Athens, it was a direct democracy. That means there were no politicians in the middle. Citizens would actually show up, argue, debate, and vote on the laws themselves. And get this, to stop any one person from getting too powerful, a lot of public jobs were filled by a lottery, just picked at random. But, and this is a huge but, not everyone got to be a citizen, not even close. If you were a woman, a slave, or not born in Athens, sorry, you had no say at all.
Now, that direct democracy model is great, right? But it only really works if you're a small city. What happens when you've got a huge, sprawling territory? Well, the Romans ran right into that exact problem, and their solution was a total game changer. So here's the key difference. Instead of everyone voting on everything like in Athens, the Romans created a republic. The idea was simple but profound. You, the citizen, elect people to go and govern for you. They represent your interests. And that simple shift is what made it possible for a government of the people to scale up for a massive territory. It was a brilliant innovation. But, as we all know, empires don't last forever. And when Rome fell, that amazing idea of a republic, well, it pretty much vanished with it. For more than 1,000 years, it was like the idea just went to sleep. The world went right back to the age of kings and top-down rule. But the thing about a really good idea is it's hard to kill. The concept of democracy didn't die. It was just dormant, waiting in the wings for the right moment to make a comeback. And that first little spark came way back in 1215 in England with a document called the Magna Carta. For the very first time, it put in writing that a king's power isn't absolute, that even the king has to follow the law. Now, that was a huge deal. It planted a tiny seed that took a few hundred years to really grow, but it eventually blossomed during a period we now call the Enlightenment. This is when thinkers started asking some really big questions. They argued that a government's right to rule doesn't come from God or from birthright. It has to come from the people. And why do governments even exist? To protect our rights. They said rulers need the consent of the governed. In other words, the people have to agree to be ruled. These ideas completely flipped the script on thousands of years of tradition. And here's the thing. These weren't just sleepy ideas for dusty old books. Oh no. People weren't just talking about this stuff, they were ready to fight for it. Because these ideas, they were the spark that was about to light the fuse on a whole new age, the age of revolutions. And you can see it happen, clear as day. First, the American Revolution. The colonists basically took the Enlightenment playbook, challenged their king over representation, and built a whole new republic based on those ideas. And then, not long after, the French Revolution kicked off, with the people overthrowing their own monarchy, all in the name of liberty and the rights of citizens. So that brings us closer to today. But it's so important to remember that these revolutions didn't just create some perfect finished system and done. Nope. What they really did was kickstart a project that's still going on all over the world. So what does a modern democracy usually look like? Well, it's kind of a greatest hits album of all these ideas we've been talking about. We have representation, that's an idea borrowed straight from the Romans. We have regular, free, and fair elections, so the people can choose. And crucially, we have constitutions. Those are the rule books that protect our rights and keep the government from getting too powerful. But here's the thing, there's no single right way to do democracy. It's not a finished product you can just take out of the box. It's alive, it's constantly changing, and it is always facing new challenges. It's a constant work in progress. So when you look back at the whole story, it's pretty incredible, right? It goes from this crazy radical experiment in one little city all the way to a global idea. It's a story that was built on debate, on struggle, and on powerful ideas. But that story isn't over, not by a long shot. The next chapter is being written right now. So the real question is, what's our part in it going to be?